The sleepy town of Oakhaven was a place woven from quiet moments and the scent of turning leaves. Nestled deep within a valley, its heart beat to the rhythm of the seasons, each one painting the landscape in hues of memory and promise. For Alara Vance, Oakhaven was more than just home. It was the whispered comfort of familiar faces, the steadfast embrace of ancient trees, and the sacred hush of the town's beloved library, where she had spent the better part of her 30 years. The library was her sanctuary, a grand, ivy-clad building that smelled of aged paper, polished wood, and the faint, sweet perfume of drying wildflowers from the window boxes. Its tall, arched windows looked out onto the town square, where children chased pigeons and old men shared stories on sun-warmed benches. Inside, it was a labyrinth of stories, a silent symphony of human experience bound in leather and cloth. Alara, with her spectacles often perched on her nose and a stray strand of dark, wavy hair escaping her braid, moved through the towering shelves with the quiet grace of a forest creature. She knew every nook, every creak in the floorboards, every book that yearned for a reader. Her days unfolded with a comforting predictability. Mornings began with the brewing of Earl Grey tea, the gentle hum of the old clock on the mantelpiece, and the first light filtering through the stained glass transom above the main entrance, splashing the worn carpet with jewel tones. She'd meticulously reshelve returned books, her fingers brushing over their spines, sometimes pausing to read a forgotten inscription or a dog-eared passage. In the afternoons, children would tumble in, their boisterous energy momentarily disrupting the peace, before they settled into the beanbag chairs in the children's corner, lost in tales of dragons and faraway lands. Evenings brought a scattering of avid readers, researchers, and the occasional lonely soul seeking warmth and companionship among the silent storytellers. Alara loved her life in Oakhaven. It was simple, full of small joys, the perfect cup of tea, the scent of rain on dry earth, the rare book discovery. Yet, sometimes in the quietest hours, a different kind of whisper would stir within her, a longing for a story yet unwritten, a connection that stretched beyond the pages of a book. She was content, yes, but her heart, like an unread novel, held chapters waiting to be filled. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, about a month ago. Alara was processing a stack of returned novels, her mind half listening to the soft classical music she often played. She picked up an old edition of Wuthering Heights, its cover faded, its pages soft with age. As she opened it to check for any damage, a small, elegantly crafted bookmark slipped out. It wasn't one of the library's usual laminated ones. This was different, a slender strip of thick cream-colored paper, carefully embossed with a single delicate sprig of lavender. At the bottom, in exquisite script, was a single word, solacing. Alara picked it up, her brow furrowing slightly. It was beautiful, too beautiful to be accidental. She looked around, but the library was empty save for the steady drip of the leaky faucet in the back office, a familiar companion. She shrugged, assuming someone had simply forgotten it, and placed it on her desk, intending to put it in the lost and found. But something about it made her pause. The word solacine resonated, a quiet echo in her own peaceful, solitary existence. A few days later, it happened again. This time, in a collection of frost poems. Another bookmark identical in style, but this one bore a pressed forget-me-not and the word, drift tide. Then, a week after that, tucked inside a well-loved copy of Pride and Prejudice, a bookmark with a tiny, intricate drawing of an oak leaf, and the word, kindred doing. Now, Alara was certain it wasn't an accident. Someone was deliberately leaving these for her, or at least, for the books she handled. Her heart, usually so calm and steady, fluttered with a strange mix of curiosity and a nascent thrill. Who was doing this? And why? She started looking for them, a quiet game she played with herself. Each morning, as she began her work, her eyes would scan the returned books with a new eagerness. And more often than not, she would find one. A bookmark with a tiny feather and the word, whisper. Another with a miniature painting of a distant lighthouse and a beacon. A perfect, tiny rosebud pressed onto one, bearing the word, bloom. These small, anonymous gifts became a secret solace, a gentle, unspoken conversation that brought a warmth to her days. She kept them, carefully arranging them on the shelf above her desk, a growing collection of beautiful words and fleeting images. They felt personal, almost intimate, as if the sender knew something about the quiet corners of her soul. She tried to deduce the culprit. Was it Mrs. Henderson, the retired English teacher with her sharp wit and love for poetry? Or perhaps young Leo, the shy artist who spent hours sketching in the art section? She even considered Mr. Bellamy, the eccentric historian who always wore a tweed jacket, even in summer. But none of them quite fit the delicate elegance, the subtle thoughtfulness of the bookmarks. The gestures felt too refined, too deeply considered for anyone she currently knew. Then, about 2 weeks after the first bookmark appeared, Hay walked into the library. Ilara was at the main desk, absorbed in cataloging a new shipment of books. The bell above the door chimed softly, a sound she usually registered without much thought. But this time, a subtle shift in the air, a new kind of quiet, made her look up. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway, and a lean, thoughtful build. His hair was the color of rich earth, falling in an easy wave across his forehead, and his eyes, a deep shade of hazel, held a quiet intensity that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a simple, well-worn denim jacket over a dark sweater, and carried a worn leather messenger bag slung across his chest. He wasn't overtly handsome in a flashy way, but there was an understated strength, a compelling stillness about him that drew her gaze. He paused just inside the entrance, his eyes slowly sweeping across the shelves, a soft, almost reverent smile touching his lips. It was the smile that truly caught Ilara's attention, warm and genuine, as if he had just found something he'd been searching for his entire life. He walked with a quiet grace towards the history section, his footsteps barely audible on the polished floorboards. Ilara watched him, a strange, unfamiliar flutter starting in her chest. She rarely saw newcomers in Oakhaven. It wasn't a town people simply stumbled upon. And this man, he was different. He carried an air of quiet contemplation, a depth that was both intriguing and a little intimidating. He spent a long time in the history section, pulling out books, carefully examining them, sometimes opening one and reading a few pages before returning it. Ilara found herself glancing at him more often than she should, her cataloging duties momentarily forgotten. She wondered who he was, what brought him to Oakhaven, what stories he carried within him. Finally, he approached the circulation desk, a stack of 4 hefty books in his arms. He placed them gently on the counter. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice a low, melodic rumble that sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. It was a voice that belonged to quiet libraries and whispered secrets. "Good afternoon," Ilara replied, her voice a little breathier than usual. She looked at the books, The Hidden History of Oakhaven, Native Flora of the Valley, Artisan Crafts of Appalachia, and an Introduction to Timber Framing. An interesting, eclectic mix. "Just moved to town," he offered, as if sensing her unspoken question. "Rhys Callan." He extended a hand across the counter. His grip was firm, warm, and brief. "Ilara Vance," she replied, her fingers tingling slightly from the contact. "Welcome to Oakhaven, Mr. Callan. What brings you our way?" "Rhys, please," he corrected gently. "And I've bought the old Miller house on the edge of town, planning to restore it, do some woodworking." He gestured vaguely with his head. "It needs a lot of love, but it has good bones." Ilara's eyes widened. The Miller house. It was a beautiful, but derelict Victorian mansion that had stood empty for decades, a local legend. Many had tried to buy it, but none had seen the project through. The Miller house? That's quite an undertaking. Rhys smiled again, a slow, captivating curve of his lips. "I enjoy a challenge, and the history of the place, the craftsmanship, it called to me." As Ilara processed his books, her mind raced. A craftsman. Someone who appreciated history and beauty, who worked with his hands. Someone who had chosen Oakhaven, a town famous for its quiet charm and its deep respect for tradition. Could he be? She handed him his library card, a new one she'd just created for him. Their fingers brushed again, and this time, Ilara felt a definite spark. "Thank you, Ilara," he said, his eyes meeting hers, holding them for a beat longer than necessary. There was an unspoken question in their depths, a shared moment of understanding that transcended their brief conversation. He turned to leave, his presence lingering in the air long after the bell chimed his departure. Elara found herself staring at the empty doorway, a silly, hopeful smile playing on her lips. Over the next few weeks, Rhys became a regular fixture in the library. He came in almost every other day, sometimes for new books on architecture or local history, sometimes just to sit in a quiet corner and read. He always returned his books promptly, and Elara noticed his careful handling of them. He never dog-eared pages, never left coffee stains. He treated them with the same reverence she did. Their interactions remained brief, polite, and always infused with that subtle current of unspoken curiosity. Elara learned small things about him. He loved strong coffee, preferred classical music while he worked, and had an insatiable hunger for knowledge about Oakhaven's past. He, in turn, seemed to learn about her. He'd occasionally ask her for a recommendation, always choosing a book she clearly loved. The anonymous bookmarks continued to appear. And now Elara found herself scrutinizing each one, looking for clues, for connections to Rhys. One afternoon, she found a bookmark in a book on ancient woodworking techniques that Rhys had just returned. It bore a delicate drawing of a chisel and the word, Kraftendata. Her heart gave a hopeful leap. It had to be him. It just had to. Another time, she found one in a book about local legends. This one had a tiny, faded map of Oakhaven's surrounding forests, and the word, Pothegi. Rhys had mentioned he enjoyed hiking the local trails. The evidence was mounting, circumstantial, yet compelling. Elara felt a delicious tension building within her, a thrilling sense of anticipation. She wanted to ask him, to break the quiet spell, but something held her back. The anonymity of the bookmarks was part of their charm, part of the gentle, unfolding mystery. To reveal it too soon felt like tearing the last pages from a cherished novel. One blustery autumn evening, as twilight settled over Oakhaven, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange, Elara was alone in the library. The wind rattled the windows and the old building groaned contentedly around her. She was about to lock up, when the bell above the door chimed once more. It was Rhys. He stood there, framed by the darkening sky, his shoulders dusted with a fine sheen of rain. "I apologize, Elara," he said, a sheepish smile on his face. "I know it's late, just wanted to return this before morning." He held out a single book, Oakhaven's Architectural Wonders. Elara took the book, her fingers brushing his again. The warmth of his hand lingered. "No trouble at all, Rhys. I was just finishing up." He leaned against the counter, his gaze sweeping over the quiet library. "It's peaceful in here, especially at this hour. You must love it." "I do," Elara confessed, her voice soft. "It feels like home." "I understand that feeling," Rhys murmured, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm trying to create that at the Miller house, bringing something old back to life, giving it new purpose. There's a certain satisfaction in that, isn't there?" "A great deal," Elara agreed, her heart quickening. She thought of the stories she rescued from dusty shelves, the forgotten voices she brought back to life for new readers. There was a comfortable silence between them, filled only by the whisper of the wind outside. Elara found herself wishing the moment wouldn't end. She wanted to ask him about the bookmarks, to unravel the mystery, to confirm the hope that was blossoming in her chest. But the words wouldn't come. Rhys pushed away from the counter, a faint regret in his eyes. "Well, I should let you close up. Don't want to keep you." "Good night, Rhys," Elara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Good night, Elara," he replied, and for a moment, he lingered, his gaze holding hers. Then, with a nod, he turned and walked out into the gathering dusk. Elara watched him go, a wistful sigh escaping her lips. She picked up the book he'd just returned, intending to reshelve it immediately. As she opened it, a small familiar object slipped out and landed softly on the counter. It was a bookmark. This one was different from all the others. It wasn't embossed, nor did it have a pressed flower. Instead, it was a perfectly cut rectangle of cream paper, and on it, in that same elegant script, were just 3 words, stark and clear. "Whispers of you." Why? Elara's breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, tracing the delicate letters. "Whispers of you." Not a general word, not a poetic sentiment, but a direct, undeniable message. A personal one. A warmth spread through her, chasing away the chill of the autumn evening. Her cheeks flushed, and a wide, hopeful smile bloomed on her face. The mystery was no longer a mystery. The quiet game had been revealed. It was him. It had always been him. And now, the true story, the one she had unknowingly longed for, was finally ready to begin. She clutched the book to her chest, the leather soft against her fingers, the title a silent echo in the crisp air. Whispers of You. It was so unequivocally him. The careful placement, the choice of words, it spoke volumes of a man who saw details, who thought deeply, who understood the quiet language of gestures. Her heart, which had been a steady, predictable rhythm for years, now beat a frantic, joyful drum against her ribs. She looked around the square, the autumnal light fading into the softer hues of twilight. The bookstore windows glowed, casting warm rectangles onto the cobblestones. Had he been watching? Had he seen her pick it up? A blush crept from her neck to the tips of her ears. The thought was both mortifying and thrilling. She felt utterly exposed, yet cherished. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. She knew she couldn't just stand there, clutching the book like a treasured secret. This wasn't a secret anymore. It was an invitation. An invitation she desperately wanted to accept. But how? Her gaze fell back to the bookstore. He'd be inside, likely tidying shelves, perhaps restocking the very section she'd just left. The thought of walking in, book in hand, and simply looking at him made her knees feel weak. What would she say? "Oh look, you left this for me." It sounded absurd, too direct for the delicate dance they had been performing. She took a deep, fortifying breath. This wasn't a moment for overthinking. It was a moment for courage. For once, Alara, the quiet artist who preferred to observe from the sidelines, felt a fierce surge of determination. She wasn't just going to wait for life to happen to her anymore. Leo, with his quiet strength and thoughtful gestures, had shown her that. Turning, she walked purposefully towards the bookstore entrance. The bell above the door chimed, a bright, welcoming sound. The familiar scent of old paper and coffee enveloped her. Her eyes immediately sought him out. He was at the back, just as she'd imagined, carefully aligning a row of first editions. His dark hair fell slightly over his brow as he concentrated, and the soft light from a reading lamp illuminated his profile. He looked up as she approached, his gaze meeting hers. For a fleeting second, his usual calm demeanor faltered. A flicker of something, surprise? Hope? Crossed his face before settling back into a gentle smile. "Alara," he said, his voice a low, warm murmur that seemed to wrap around her. "Back so soon?" She held up the book, not hiding it, but not brandishing it either. I think you left something for me." His eyes dropped to the cover, then lifted back to hers. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken words. His smile softened, deepening the crinkles at the corners of his eyes. "Did I?" he asked, his voice laced with a playful warmth she hadn't heard before, a hint of vulnerability. "Yes," she whispered, her own voice barely audible. "This, whispers of you." She paused, then added, emboldened by the silent understanding in his gaze, "It's beautiful." He stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding. "I thought you might appreciate it," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "It felt like something you would like, something that spoke to the way I felt." Her heart hammered. He wasn't denying it. He was confirming it. And more. He was confessing. "Leo," she began, the name feeling new and significant on her tongue. This changes everything." He reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against hers as he took the book from her. Their skin contact was fleeting, yet it sent a jolt of electricity through her. He opened the book to the dedication page, where she had seen his familiar, elegant script. This time, he didn't hand it back. He simply held it, looking at the words. "I know," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. "I hoped it would." He looked up, his eyes searching hers, full of a quiet intensity. "Alara, I've been watching you, more than watching. I've been captivated by the way you see the world, by the way you lose yourself in a painting, by the quiet grace you carry." He took a hesitant step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I've wanted to tell you to really talking to you for so long. But I didn't know how. I'm not always good with words, not in the way you are with colors." He gestured vaguely towards her art portfolio, which she often carried. "So I thought, perhaps a book could help me say it." A tear pricked at the corner of Ilara's eye. To be seen, truly seen by someone like him, was a profound comfort, a balm to parts of her she hadn't even realized were aching. "You said it perfectly," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "It's the most wonderful thing anyone has ever done for me." He smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up his face. "Then I'm glad, more than glad." He paused, then took another small step, closing the distance between them. "Would you perhaps like to talk about it? Over a cup of tea? Or something more substantial?" The quiet invitation hung in the air, a promise of shared time, of deeper conversations. Ilara didn't hesitate. "Yes," she breathed, her smile mirroring his. "Yes, I would love that, Leo." He replaced the book carefully on a nearby counter, his actions deliberate, as if acknowledging its significance. "Give me just a moment to lock up," he said, his eyes sparkling with a newfound lightness. "And then, where would you like to go?" Ilara felt a lightness spread through her, a sense of anticipation that hummed in her veins. The world, which had always been a beautiful but sometimes solitary place for her, suddenly felt vast and full of exciting possibilities. As Leo moved about the store, tidying, locking, preparing to step out of his quiet sanctuary and into the evening with her, Ilara realized that the true story had indeed begun, and it felt like the most exquisite, comforting whisper she had ever heard. They decided on the Quill and Kettle, a small, independently owned cafe just 2 doors down from the bookstore. It was known for its mismatched antique teacups, the comforting aroma of freshly baked scones, and the gentle hum of quiet conversation. It felt like an extension of their own cozy worlds. Settling into a secluded corner booth, Ilara found herself surprisingly at ease, despite the whirlwind of emotions still swirling within her. Leo ordered 2 cups of Earl Grey and a slice of apple crumble to share, his movements calm and assured. "I still can't believe it," Ilara confessed, tracing the rim of her teacup as the warmth seeped into her fingers. "All this time, all the times I'd come into the store, and you were always so kind, so helpful, I never imagined." She trailed off, a soft blush dusting her cheeks. Leo leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know the feeling," he admitted, a small, self-deprecating smile playing on his lips. "Every time you'd walk in, the light would seem to shift, and I'd find myself watching you browse, wondering what art you were creating, what worlds you were seeing in those pages. I wanted to ask you about your work, about everything, but I was afraid of breaking the spell, I suppose." "The spell," she echoed, intrigued. "The quiet understanding," he clarified. "The way we'd just exist in the same space, knowing the other was there, it felt precious, and I didn't want to risk shattering it with clumsy words." He took a sip of his tea. "But the thought of not knowing you better became more unbearable than the risk." Ilara felt a profound sense of recognition. He articulated her own unspoken fears, her own hesitations. "I felt that too," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've always been drawn to quiet beauty, to the subtle colors and hidden meanings. Your bookstore, it felt like a haven." "It is," he agreed, his eyes shining. "And you, Ilara, you brought a new kind of beauty into it, a living, breathing kind." They talked for hours, the apple crumble long forgotten, the teacups refilled multiple times. They spoke of books, of course, their favorite authors, the stories that had shaped them, the power of words. Leo revealed a surprising depth of knowledge not just in literature, but in art history, asking Ilara about her techniques, her inspirations, the emotions she sought to convey in her landscapes. "I mostly work with watercolors," she explained, her hands gesturing slightly as she spoke, "because I love the way the colors bleed and blend, creating unexpected depths." "It does," Leo mused, his gaze thoughtful. "And I see that in your pieces. There's a softness, but also a quiet strength. A resilience in the way you capture light. He didn't just listen. He truly heard her, drawing out details she rarely shared. He spoke of his own quiet passion for collecting rare editions, not for their monetary value, but for the stories they carried, the history within their aged pages. He described the thrill of finding a forgotten inscription, a pressed flower, a margin note that connected him to a reader from a century past. "It's like having a conversation across time," he explained, his eyes alight. "A little whisper from someone long gone, reminding you that human experience, our hopes and fears, are universal." Elara found herself completely captivated. His quiet intensity, his gentle enthusiasm, the way his hands moved subtly as he spoke, every detail drew her in. She realized that beneath his calm exterior was a vibrant, thoughtful soul, just as she suspected. He was a man who appreciated nuance, who found beauty in the overlooked, who understood the profound power of quiet connection. As the cafe slowly emptied and the owner began to subtly stack chairs, Leo looked at her, his expression soft. "Elara," he began, I feel like I've known you for years, and yet I'm just beginning to know you at all." "Me too," she admitted, a warm, hopeful feeling blossoming in her chest. "It's like finding a missing piece of a puzzle I didn't even know I was trying to solve." He smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. "May I walk you home?" "I'd like that very much," she said, her voice light. The autumn night air was crisp and cool as they stepped out, the streetlights casting long shadows. They walked slowly, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The comfortable silence that had once defined their interactions now felt different. It was no longer a barrier, but a shared space of quiet intimacy. "Thank you, Leo," Elara said as they reached her small cottage, its windows glowing with a soft interior light. "For tonight, for the book, for everything." He stopped at her gate, his hands tucked into his pockets. "No, Elara, thank you for seeing it, for understanding, for taking a chance." He hesitated, then reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray wisp of hair from her face. His touch was feather-light, yet it sent a shiver of delight through her. "I hope this is just the beginning." "It is," she confirmed, her gaze locked with his. She wanted to lean in, to close the small distance between them, but a part of her cherished the slow unfolding nature of their connection. This was a story meant to be savored, not rushed. He nodded, a soft smile on his lips. "Good night, Elara." "Good night, Leo." She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the soft glow of the streetlights. When he was out of sight, she finally stepped inside, her heart singing. The cottage felt warmer, brighter, imbued with the lingering magic of the evening. She touched her cheek where his fingers had brushed, a soft smile gracing her lips. The whispers had found their voice, and the true story was unfolding, one gentle, heartwarming chapter at a time. The days that followed were imbued with a new kind of light for Elara. The world seemed to shimmer with possibility, painted in brighter hues. Every morning, she woke with a sense of hopeful anticipation, and every evening, she drifted to sleep with Leah's quiet smile, his thoughtful words, echoing in her mind. Their interactions became more frequent, more intentional. She no longer just browsed in his bookstore. She came specifically to see him, to share snippets of her day, to listen to his own. He started saving particular books for her, poetry collections he thought she'd appreciate, art history tomes he knew would spark her imagination, even a rare, beautifully illustrated children's book that reminded him, he said, of the gentle wonder in her eyes. One crisp afternoon, as the last of the autumn leaves swirled like tiny dancers on the cobblestones, Elara brought him a gift. It was a small, delicate watercolor painting she had finished that morning, a serene depiction of his bookstore's facade, bathed in the soft, golden light of dawn, with a single, open book resting on the windowsill. "For you?" she said, her voice a little shy, as she handed him the wrapped canvas. Leo unwrapped it slowly, his eyes widening as he saw the image. A soft gasp escaped him. "Elara, this is magnificent." He held it carefully, turning it this way and that, his gaze lingering on every brushstroke. "You captured it perfectly. The quiet invitation, the warmth, even the specific shade of morning light. He looked up at her, his eyes full of genuine awe. "It's like you painted a piece of my soul." Her heart swelled at his words. To have her art understood so deeply, to have it resonate with him, was a profound joy. "It's a piece of our soul now, I think," she murmured, a gentle smile on her lips. He placed the painting carefully on a shelf behind the counter, where it would be safe and visible only to him. "It will be my most treasured possession," he promised, his voice low and sincere. Their conversations deepened beyond books and art. They spoke of their dreams, their quiet fears, the paths they had taken to arrive at this small, charming town. Elara discovered that Leo had once harbored dreams of being a writer, but found his voice more powerfully through curating the words of others. He confessed to a lifelong love of puzzles and riddles, explaining his subtle game with the book as a literary treasure hunt. "I wanted to see if you'd find it," he admitted one evening, as they shared hot chocolate in the quill and kettle. "If you'd notice the pattern, the little clues. I wasn't sure if you'd even pick up the book, let alone read the inscription." "I almost didn't," she confessed, a small laugh bubbling up. "I thought it was just a happy coincidence at first, but then, whispers of you. It felt too specific to be chance." He reached across the small table, his hand gently covering hers. "It wasn't chance, Elara, not at all." His touch was warm, comforting, and utterly right. Their quiet dates continued, long walks through the town square as the trees shed their final leaves, leaving skeletal branches against the crisp sky. Evenings spent poring over antique maps in the bookstore, imagining journeys to distant lands, even a shared afternoon of baking, where Elara, usually more at home with a paintbrush than a rolling pin, found herself laughing freely as Leo patiently guided her through a recipe for spiked gingerbread cookies. It was during one of these quiet moments, curled up on a plush armchair in the bookstore after closing, the only light coming from a single lamp and the glowing embers of a small fireplace, that Leo truly opened up. He was reading aloud from a poetry collection, his voice a soft, resonant baritone that filled the cozy space. He paused, his gaze lifting from the page to meet hers. "There's a line in here," he began, his voice thoughtful, "that talks about finding your kindred spirit not in grand declarations, but in the quiet comfort of shared silences, in the way another person understands the unspoken language of your heart." He closed the book, setting it gently on his lap. "That's what it feels like with you, Elara." Elara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes welled up, not with sadness, but with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and profound connection. For so long she had felt a gentle current of loneliness, a subtle yearning for someone who truly saw her, who spoke her quiet language. And now, here he was, articulating it, making it real. "It feels like that for me too, Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Like coming home to a place I didn't even realize I was looking for." He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. His eyes, usually so calm and steady, now held a deep, tender vulnerability. "Elara," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words, spoken so softly yet with such conviction, settled over her like a warm, comforting blanket. A wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed through her. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic declaration, but a natural, inevitable unfolding of a feeling that had been quietly blooming between them for weeks, perhaps even months. "I think I'm falling in love with you too, Leo," she confessed, her own heart overflowing. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she met him halfway. His lips, soft and warm, met hers in a gentle kiss that was less a passionate embrace and more a tender promise. It was a kiss that tasted of quiet understanding, of shared dreams, of the comforting scent of old books and newly found hope. It was everything she had ever longed for, wrapped in the delicate, beautiful whispers of their shared story. When they finally pulled apart, it was only by an inch, their foreheads still resting together, their eyes closed. The silence that followed was not empty, but full, brimming with the weight of their confessions, the warmth of their connection. "This," Elara whispered, her voice full of wonder, "this is more beautiful than any painting I could ever create." Leo opened his eyes, a soft, loving smile gracing his lips. "And you, Elara, are more captivating than any story I could ever read." He tightened his arm around her, pulling her closer, and together, they simply sat in the quiet embrace of the bookstore, surrounded by the silent witnesses of countless stories, ready for their own to continue unfolding, chapter by heartwarming chapter, into the beautiful, unknown future. The whispers had become a symphony, and Elara knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that this was only the beginning of their most cherished tale. The quiet embrace deepened, the world outside the bookstore fading into a soft hum. Elara leaned into Liam, her head resting against his shoulder, her hand instinctively finding his, fingers intertwining. The rough, comforting texture of his jacket against her cheek, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. It was a symphony indeed, one composed of perfect peace and burgeoning love. A cherished tale, Liam murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. I like the sound of that. What's the first chapter, do you think? Elara smiled, not looking up, just savoring the moment. I think the first chapter is always about discovery, isn't it? Discovering a new world, a new character, a new possibility. She paused and added, and perhaps discovering that the stories we thought were only in books can truly come alive. He squeezed her hand. And what a discovery it is. I never imagined my story could be quite so vivid. His fingers gently stroked the back of her hand, sending a ripple of warmth through her. The soft chime of a bell from the front of the store broke the spell, a gentle reminder that even the most magical moments had to acknowledge the practicalities of the world. Mrs. Gable, the bookstore owner, a woman with kind eyes and a perpetually knowing smile, appeared from behind a towering shelf of classics. Still here, you two? She chuckled, her voice warm. It's well past closing time. Though, I must admit, you make for rather picturesque patrons. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, but Liam, ever composed, simply smiled. Our apologies, Mrs. Gable. We rather lost track of time. Indeed, Elara added, her voice a little shy. The stories here are very distracting. Mrs. Gable winked. Some stories more than others, I imagine. Now, off you go. The books will still be here tomorrow, and I suspect, so will a few new chapters of your own. She shooed them gently towards the door, her smile growing wider as she watched them gather their things, a silent blessing in her gaze. Stepping out of the bookstore and into the cool evening air, the streetlights cast long dancing shadows. The scent of damp earth and distant jasmine filled the night. Liam didn't immediately let go of Elara's hand. He simply held it, a silent anchor. Walk you home? He asked, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin. Please, she whispered, her heart still thrumming with the quiet magic of the bookstore. The walk was unhurried, punctuated by comfortable silences and soft murmurs. They talked about the stars, about a particularly stubborn customer Liam had encountered earlier that day, about a new historical novel Elara was eager to read. But beneath the surface of their words a deeper current flowed, an unspoken acknowledgement of the shift in their relationship, a beautiful, tentative promise. As they reached Elara's doorstep, the porch light casting a warm, welcoming glow, the familiar knot of apprehension that usually accompanied goodbyes began to tighten in Elara's chest. But Liam's presence was a calming balm. He turned to face her, his hands gently framing her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. His eyes, in the soft light, were deep pools of warmth and sincerity. Elara, he began, his voice barely a whisper, tonight was more than I could have hoped for. She leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his. For me too, Liam, more than I ever dared to imagine. His gaze dropped to her lips, and a shiver, not of cold but of anticipation, ran through her. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. His lips, soft and warm, met hers in a kiss that was both tender and profound. It was a kiss that tasted of quiet promises, of shared dreams, of the undeniable truth that had been building between them. It was a kiss that sealed the beginning of their story, a silent vow whispered on the wind. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were still on hers, a silent question lingering in their depth. Elara didn't need words. She simply smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that reached her eyes and squeezed his hand. Good night, Liam. Good night, Elara, he replied, his voice husky. He lingered for a moment longer, then, with a final lingering squeeze of her hand, turned and walked down the path, glancing back once to offer her another smile before disappearing into the shadows of the street. Elara stood on her porch for a long moment, her fingers touching her lips, a soft sigh escaping her. The world felt brighter, imbued with a new kind of magic. She carried the warmth of his touch, the echo of his words, and the promise of their kiss deep within her as she finally went inside, ready to dream of new chapters. The following days unfolded like the turning pages of a beloved book, each one revealing a new layer of their unfolding story. Liam called the next morning, his voice warm and eager, to suggest dinner. Elara, her heart doing a little flutter, readily agreed. Their first official date was at a small, cozy Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and the scent of garlic and basil perfuming the air. They talked for hours, sharing anecdotes from their childhoods, dreams for their futures, and their surprisingly similar views on everything from obscure historical facts to the proper way to brew tea. Elara found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, enchanted by Liam's dry wit and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He listened with an attentiveness that made her feel truly seen, asking thoughtful questions that encouraged her to elaborate, to delve deeper into her passions and curiosities. Liam, in turn, spoke of his love for woodworking, the satisfaction of transforming raw timber into something beautiful and functional. He described the intricate joinery, the scent of sawdust, the quiet focus of his workshop. Elara, who had always appreciated craftsmanship, found herself utterly captivated. She could picture him, strong and steady, his hands skilled and precise, creating beauty with purpose. It was a side of him that resonated deeply with her own love for the careful construction of stories. "It's like building a narrative, isn't it?" she mused, swirling her fork through her pasta. "Each piece, each joint, has to fit perfectly for the whole to be strong and beautiful." Liam's eyes lit up. "Exactly, you understand. It's not just about the final product, it's about the process, the journey of bringing an idea into existence." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his, a gesture that was becoming wonderfully familiar. "You always find the right words, Elara." That night, as he walked her home, a light rain began to fall, turning the streetlights into blurry halos. Liam pulled her close under his umbrella, his arm a warm, protective barrier against the chill. On her doorstep, he didn't kiss her goodbye immediately. Instead, he simply held her, his chin resting gently on her head, her ear pressed against his chest. She could hear the steady rhythm of his heart, feel the warmth radiating from him. It was a comfort so profound, so utterly right, that it made her chest ache with a sweet, aching tenderness. "I feel at peace with you, Liam," she confessed, her voice muffled against his shirt. He tightened his embrace. "The feeling is entirely mutual, Elara. More than peace, actually, a kind of homecoming." When he finally lifted her chin and kissed her, it was with a gentle reverence, a silent promise of all the comfort and joy yet to come. When, over the next few weeks, their world expanded to encompass each other. Sundays became their designated adventure days. They explored hidden corners of the city, discovered quaint antique shops, wandered through botanical gardens hand in hand, and often found themselves back in Mrs. Gable's bookstore, sharing knowing smiles with the kindly owner. One crisp autumn Saturday, Liam invited Elara to his workshop. It was nestled in a quiet industrial area, a spacious, high-ceilinged room filled with the scent of wood, the gleam of tools, and the quiet hum of machinery. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the windows. Liam, in a worn denim apron, looked utterly at home amidst the organized chaos. "Welcome to my sanctuary," he said, gesturing around with a proud smile. "It's not as quiet as a library, but it has its own kind of symphony." Elara's eyes widened, taking in the various pieces of wood, some rough-hewn, some finely polished, and the half-finished projects waiting patiently for his touch. She ran a hand over a smooth plank of cherrywood. "It's beautiful, Liam. The smell. It's wonderful." He showed her his tools, explained the different types of wood, and demonstrated how a rough piece could be planed smooth. He even let her try sanding a small block of oak, guiding her hand with his, their fingers brushing as he corrected her grip. The simple act sent a thrill through her. "You have such a gentle touch for something so strong," she observed, watching him deftly handle a chisel. He chuckled. It's all about respect for the material, Alara. And patience. Good things take time. He paused, looking at her, a soft smile playing on his lips. Like good stories, I suppose. Later, sitting on a workbench, sharing sandwiches and hot coffee from a thermos, Alara felt a deeper connection forming. Seeing Liam in his element, witnessing his passion firsthand, revealed another layer of the man she was falling in love with. He was not just kind and thoughtful. He was also dedicated, skilled, and deeply passionate about his craft. What are you working on now? She asked, gesturing to a large, intricate piece covered with a canvas. He hesitated for a moment, a rare flicker of shyness crossing his face. It's a commission for a children's library, a reading nook shaped like an open book with little carved animals peering out from the pages. Alara gasped, her eyes shining. Liam, that's incredible. You have to show me. He pulled back the canvas, revealing a partially completed structure that was already breathtaking. The curves of the pages were gracefully carved, and a small, mischievous-looking fox was just beginning to emerge from the wood. It's a story waiting to be told, he said, his gaze fixed on the piece, a deep satisfaction in his voice. For children to step into, to imagine themselves within. Alara felt a lump form in her throat. This man, with his steady hands and gentle heart, was not just building furniture. He was building worlds, just like the authors she so admired. He was, in his own way, a storyteller. It's magnificent, she breathed, genuinely moved. Truly magnificent, Liam. He turned to her, his smile soft and genuine. I hoped you'd like it. He then reached out, gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. You inspire me, you know. Your love for stories, your quiet strength. It makes me want to create things that are just as beautiful. Her heart swelled, a warmth spreading through her chest that settled deep in her soul. To be seen, to be understood, to be an inspiration. It was a feeling more precious than any rare first edition. 1. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship blossomed with a natural, unforced grace. They met each other's friends, Alara's quirky book club members, Liam's jovial woodworking colleagues, and found themselves easily integrated into each other's lives. There were no grand declarations needed, no dramatic turning points, just a steady, comforting accretion of shared moments and quiet understandings. They developed their own rituals. Sunday morning walks in the park, followed by coffee and crosswords, Tuesday night takeout and a movie, and always a visit to the bookstore, where Mrs. Gable would greet them with a knowing smile and a fresh pot of tea. Alara found herself shedding some of her innate shyness, opening up to Liam in ways she hadn't thought possible. She shared her quiet anxieties about her job as a copy editor, the sometimes isolating nature of her work, and her lifelong dream of one day writing her own story. Liam listened, offering not facile solutions, but unwavering support and belief. You have so many stories inside you, Alara, he would say, holding her hand. I can feel them, and when you're ready to write them, I'll be your first reader. His faith in her was a powerful thing, a gentle wind beneath her wings. It made her feel brave enough to consider possibilities she had once dismissed as fanciful. One evening, after a particularly challenging day at work where a difficult author had tested her patience to its limits, Alara arrived home feeling deflated and exhausted. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her bag, and slumped onto the sofa, wishing for nothing more than a quiet evening alone with a comforting book. Then, her doorbell rang. It was Liam, holding a large pizza box in one hand and a bouquet of wildflowers in the other. His eyes were filled with concern. Rough day? He asked, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. Alara managed a weak smile. You could say that. How did you know? He shrugged, setting the pizza down and handing her the flowers. Just a feeling. You weren't answering your phone for a while, and, well, I just had a hunch you might need a friendly face, and perhaps some pepperoni. Tears pricked at Alara's eyes. It was such a small gesture, but it meant the world. He hadn't tried to fix it, hadn't offered platitudes. He had simply shown up, armed with comfort and understanding. Oh, Liam, she whispered, burying her face in the fragrant blooms. You're truly wonderful. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as she leaned into his warmth. Just wanted to make sure my favorite storyteller had a happy ending to her day, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. They ate pizza on the sofa, sharing stories of their day, his of a particularly stubborn piece of oak, hers of the author who refused to acknowledge a misplaced semicolon. He made her laugh, his easy humor dissolving the tension that had tightened her shoulders all day. As the evening wound down, and he prepared to leave, Alara felt a profound sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice soft. "For everything, for just being here." He took her hands in his gaze steady. "Always, Alara, always." He kissed her then, a long, tender kiss that spoke of reassurance, of unwavering support, of a love that was growing deeper and stronger with each passing day. It was a kiss that promised home, no matter where they were. Why? Their relationship wasn't without its tiny, charming quirks. Alara was a meticulous planner, her days often scheduled with precision, while Liam, though dedicated to his work, had a more relaxed, spontaneous approach to his free time. Sometimes, this led to amusing misunderstandings. One Saturday, Alara had meticulously planned a visit to a new art exhibition, complete with pre-booked tickets and a detailed itinerary for lunch afterwards. Liam, meanwhile, had been captivated by a documentary on ancient Egyptian carpentry and had completely lost track of time. He arrived at her doorstep a full hour late, looking contrite and disheveled, sawdust clinging to his hair. Alara, who usually prided herself on her patience, felt a flicker of annoyance. She had been looking forward to this outing, and punctuality was something she valued. "Liam," she began, her voice a little tighter than usual. "The tickets were for 2 o'clock. We're going to miss half the exhibit." He immediately saw the disappointment in her eyes. "Oh, Alara, I am so sorry. I truly lost myself in the pyramids. It was fascinating, but that's no excuse. I should have set an alarm. I know how much you were looking forward to this." He reached for her hands, his touch warm and apologetic. "Is there any way we can still salvage it? Perhaps a later slot, or maybe we just focus on the second half?" Alara looked at his earnest, regretful face, at the way his brow was furrowed with genuine concern. The annoyance melted away, replaced by a wave of affection. She knew he wasn't careless. He was simply passionate, and at times, a little oblivious to the clock when immersed in something he loved. It was part of his charm. She squeezed his hands. "It's all right, Liam. We'll make it work. We'll just have to speed walk through the first few galleries." She couldn't help but smile. "Though I do expect a detailed account of ancient Egyptian carpentry on the way." His face lit up with relief and a grateful smile. "Deal. And I promise to be on time for the next 5 dates, or I'll carve you a miniature pyramid." They ended up having a wonderful time at the exhibition, laughing as Liam whispered historical carpentry facts about the frames of the paintings, and Alara pointed out literary allusions in the artist's statements. The small hiccup had only served to highlight their individual eccentricities, and the gentle way they navigated them together, with understanding and good humor. It wasn't about perfect alignment, she realized, but about finding harmony in their differences. Vern. As winter approached, blanketing the city in a crisp chill, their love only deepened, becoming a steady, comforting warmth against the cold. They spent cozy evenings curled up on Alara's sofa, sharing books, hot chocolate, and quiet conversations. Liam often brought over small wooden gifts he had crafted for her, a delicate bookmark carved with a tiny owl, a sturdy stand for her e-reader, a small polished box to hold her stray paperclips. Each one was a testament to his thoughtfulness, a tangible piece of his affection. One blustery evening, as snowflakes began to fall outside Alara's window, they were sitting by the fireplace, Liam reading aloud from one of Alara's favorite novels, his voice a soothing balm. Alara was nestled beside him, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. He paused, lowering the book, and turned his head to look at her. "Alara," he began, his voice soft. "I've been thinking." She looked up at him, her heart giving a gentle flutter. "Oh?" He reached out, cupping her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "This, us, it feels so right. More than right, actually. It feels like coming home." His eyes, warm and sincere, searched hers. "I've never felt this kind of peace, this kind of certainty with anyone before." Alara's breath caught in her throat. She knew exactly what he meant, because she felt it too. The restless longing that had always simmered beneath the surface of her quiet life had finally found its anchor. The missing piece she hadn't even realized she was searching for was here, beside her, in the warmth of Liam's embrace. "Me too, Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're my home, my favorite story." A tender smile spread across his face. He leaned in, kissing her softly, deeply, a kiss that tasted of warmth and forever. It wasn't a question or a proposal, but a quiet, profound affirmation of their shared journey, a silent promise exchanged between two hearts that had found their perfect match. As the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world outside in a pristine white, they simply held each other, content in the quiet sanctuary of their love. The fire continued to burn, casting long, peaceful shadows. The story they were writing together, chapter by heartwarming chapter, was unfolding beautifully, filled with the promise of countless more quiet evenings, shared laughter, and the unwavering certainty of a love that felt, at long last, like coming home. The pages of their future were still unwritten, but Alara knew, with every beat of her contented heart, that they would be filled with nothing but joy. The following morning, Alara awoke to the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the quiet hum of Liam moving around the kitchen. She stretched, a smile already gracing her lips, and patted out to find him perfectly at home, flipping pancakes with an easy grace. He looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and offered her a mug. "Morning, sleepyhead. Thought I'd get a head start." "Perfect," she murmured, taking a grateful sip. The simple domesticity of it all was a balm to her soul. They ate breakfast side by side, sharing stories from their week, making plans for a leisurely walk through the autumn-kissed park. Each shared glance, each brush of hands across the table, was a silent affirmation of the profound connection that had blossomed between them. Their days began to weave together, seamlessly. Weekends were filled with exploring new hiking trails, discovering quaint bookshops, or simply curling up on the sofa with a good movie and Liam's arm around her. Alara found herself rediscovering hobbies she'd long neglected, like painting, encouraged by Liam's genuine interest and gentle praise. He, in turn, found a new joy in gardening, inspired by Alara's green thumb and her vision for a vibrant patio space. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, a comforting cup of tea after a long day, a quiet moment of listening, an unexpected burst of laughter that lit up the room. One blustery afternoon, as they sat bundled in blankets on the porch swing, watching the leaves dance in the wind, Alara confessed a long-held dream. "I've always wanted to open a small art studio," she said, her voice soft. "Nothing grand, just a space where people could come to create, to find a little peace through art, like I do." She'd never shared this with anyone before, fearing it was too impractical, too vulnerable. Liam listened intently, his hand finding hers and gently squeezing. "That's a beautiful dream, Alara," he said, his gaze warm and steady. "Why haven't you pursued it?" She shrugged, a flicker of old insecurity crossing her face. "Fear, I suppose, and logistics. It feels big." He leaned closer, his voice a comforting rumble. "Big dreams are meant to be shared and tackled. We can look into it, find a space, brainstorm ideas. You have such a talent for making things beautiful, for making people feel at ease. I have no doubt it would thrive." His unwavering belief in her was a powerful current, sweeping away years of self-doubt. It wasn't just love, it was partnership. It was seeing each other not just for who they were, but for who they could become. A few weeks later, a casual conversation about their increasingly shared living space turned into something more profound. They were making dinner, the aroma of garlic and herbs filling the air, when Liam paused, turning to face her. "Alara," he began, his voice a little softer than usual. "This feels right. Us here, don't you think?" She nodded, her heart doing a happy flutter. "More than right, Liam. It feels like home, more than any place ever has." He smiled, a deep, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good, because I was thinking, I don't want to just feel like home with you. I want to make a home with you, officially." He reached into his pocket, and Alara's breath hitched. It wasn't a ring, not yet, but a small, intricately carved wooden key. "This isn't just a key to my apartment," he explained, his thumb tracing the delicate lines. It's a key to our future, Alara. To shared mornings, late-night talks, building that studio, maybe even a little garden for you, to everything. Tears pricked her eyes as she took the key, its smooth warmth a comforting weight in her palm. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Oh, Liam, yes. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him. It was a promise, unspoken but deeply understood, that their journey was just beginning. Life, as it always does, continued to unfold. They found a charming old storefront with large windows, perfect for Alara's studio, and spent joyous weekends painting walls and building shelves together. Liam's quiet support was her anchor, his pragmatic mind a perfect complement to her creative spirit. They learned to navigate the small bumps of cohabitation with grace and humor, finding that even disagreements ended in laughter and a deeper understanding. Their love wasn't a tempestuous fire, but a steady, radiant hearth, warming every corner of their shared existence. One crisp spring evening, after a particularly satisfying day of work at the studio, they walked hand in hand through a park bursting with new life. The air was sweet with the scent of blossoms, and the setting sun painted the sky in hues of rose and gold. Liam stopped beneath an ancient oak tree, turning to face her, his hands gently framing her face. His eyes, the color of warm honey, held a depth of love that made her heart ache with happiness. Alara, he said, his voice soft but firm. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were special. But I didn't know you were my special, my other half, my piece. He reached into his pocket once more, and this time, there was no mistaking the small, velvet box. He opened it, revealing a delicate ring with a single, luminous pearl, shimmering like a captured moonbeam. Will you make our home permanent? Will you marry me, my love? Tears streamed freely down Alara's face, blurring the beautiful world around them. Yes, she breathed, her voice a joyful gasp. 1,000 times yes, Liam. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then pulled her into a tender, soul-deep kiss that tasted of forever. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held in the garden of their new home, now vibrant with Alara's careful tending. Surrounded by their closest friends and family, beneath a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, they exchanged vows that were less about grand declarations and more about quiet promises. To always listen, to always support, to always choose kindness, and to always, always come home to each other. Years later, their life together was a tapestry woven with countless threads of shared joy. Alara's studio thrived, a haven for creativity, and Liam, ever her silent champion, had even found himself dabbling in pottery there. Their home was always filled with laughter, the scent of good food, and the quiet comfort of two souls perfectly attuned. On a quiet winter evening, much like the one where their story had truly begun, Alara sat by the fireplace, Liam's hand warm in hers. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating photographs of a life beautifully lived. Their wedding day, the opening of the studio, a small furry companion who had joined their family, and countless candid moments of shared smiles. The pearl on her finger glowed softly, a constant reminder of the day their future was sealed. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear. Remember that night? She whispered, when we talked about finding home? Liam chuckled softly, his arm tightening around her. Every single day, and every single day, I find it right here, with you. Alara closed her eyes, a profound sense of peace settling over her. The story they were writing together had unfolded with more beauty and joy than she could have ever imagined. The pages of their future were still being filled, chapter by heartwarming chapter, but she knew, with an unwavering certainty that settled deep in her soul, that their love, a quiet sanctuary built on tenderness, trust, and shared dreams, was truly, finally, and forever, home.